You are listening to the regular version of Sexy Marriage Radio. smrnation.com.
You've turned on Sexy Marriage Radio, where the best sex happens in the marriage bed. Here's your host, Dr. Corey Allen.
Well, welcome back to another episode of Sexy Marriage Radio, where it's a big day.
It is.
Here in the SMR Nation in the studio that for 10 years has been right where we're sitting in the den of our home.
And we've celebrated 10 years. We celebrated a little bit tonight,
It was fun. We woke up today and had signs from our kids celebrating it like we do with birthdays. But that's we'll get to that in just a little bit.
Okay.
Honor what's coming. But one of the things we do at Sexy Marriage Radio is we try to speak to where the nation wants to go and what's going on with them. And this listener-driven radio that's been going on, because it's been 3.5 years you've been in the co-host chair with me.
Yeah, it's been great.
Which has been fantastic. Yeah. And we don't always set the agenda. We have the nation help us set the agenda. And they call us at 214-702-9565, or they email us at feedback@sexymarriageradio.com. Or they can even create a voicemail on their phone, like just an audio recording, and email it to us. Or like today, I'm going to try out. We're just going to have some fun with today.
Okay.
Yeah, just kind of see what
I like fun.
See how this goes.
I like fun.
That you do. But if you like what's going on here at Sexy Marriage Radio, we ask that you help us spread the word. And the way you can do that is you can jump on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, whatever you choose to listen, however it is you listen. Rate and review the show. Leave a comment. Help us spread the word. Holiday seasons are around the corner. Trick-or-treating is at the end of this month. So as you're going around trick-or-treating, grab somebody's phone, subscribe them to SMR.
You know, we ought to have stickers or little treats made so people can put that in Sexy Marriage Radio.
They can put that in the baskets
stickers
of the kids
in the bags
coming along.
For the kids. Here, give this to your mom.
Yeah, advertising, baby. That is the way it goes. Because what we want to do is try to help create beautiful things in marriage. And speaking of beautiful, one of the things that's fascinating to me, I just came across this week, is we have an issue with kind of the wiring of humans, in a sense of we are all way too fast and sped up. And we don't absorb and take in beauty. It's real difficult to do because do you know, on average, how long does a person spend visiting the rim of the Grand Canyon? What do you guess?
You know, I think you drive all the way there, and on average, you're actually standing looking out there on average. I bet it's like 10 minutes.
Oh, well, 17.
Isn't that nuts?
That you're soaking in that kind of a beauty, which was awe-inspiring. The time we were there for 3 days for big chunks. We weren't there the whole time, but we camped right by it. And
we had a lot more than 17 minutes, but I see it when you get the big tour buses and all those. And if you just stay in those central functions where everybody congregates,
then you're running to get out of it. But it's one of those things. How do you take it all in? And one of the things that's been so much fun of doing Sexy Marriage Radio is trying to help people in general see something else going on and take it all in, reframe it, and soak it in. What's my role? What do I really have? Why do I be grateful for what I already have? Look at the ground we've already gained. I mean, look at the progress. There's so many things and stories we've had over the years that just confirm the fact that how do I get out of my own way to see what can become?
Yeah.
Because that's the mission of Sexy Marriage Radio, is we want to unlock and reframe conversations better so that you can experience the best sex possible and the best marriage possible. Well, coming up on today's regular free version of Sexy Marriage Radio is a little celebration. We're going to just honor the 10 years because that's definitely an anchor point that's worth acknowledging. And then we've also got an email that's come in that'll be a fun one on a topic that's a little edgy. So 10 years, let's talk about BDSM.
All right.
And then on the extended version of Sexy Marriage Radio, which is deeper, longer, and there are no ads, you can subscribe at smrnation.com/SMR Academy. We're going to have a dialogue on what are the secrets to a fantastic sex life for the people involved in a marriage. So it's not a global, it's the individuals.
Okay.
Or if we want to be a little more edgy, what's the secrets of those that get laid well?
Perfect.
All that's coming up on today's show. So, babe, it's been 10 years this week.
And job well done, Corey.
Thank you.
I mean, couldn't be more proud of what it is you're doing with this and just the effect that it's had over the last decade.
And this has been fun because today, the day we're recording it, is the day we're celebrating the beginning of this whole adventure. And so it took me to dinner.
Yeah.
With the family, had some cake. There were signs put up this morning.
We even wore birthday hats.
Birthday hats and a little candle. But it's one of those things that's truly worth marking the occasion because it was 10 years ago when this hit the airways.
I love this song.
Let's talk about sex.
And it was so great finding this one when searching for, knowing that this was coming. You know, I'd already talked to Gina, who helped get this thing launched with me.
Yep.
And came across this when I was just searching for royalty-free music and came across this song, and I'm like, that's just perfect.
I miss it. There's a part of me that wants to go back to that
where
one.
where we're going with the idea of we want to talk about sex. And how do you make it good? How do you make it vibrant? How do you make it engaging, specifically in marriage? And so this would not be possible without a lot of things.
Right. A lot of people helping.
One being the people that have been on the mic with me.
Right.
Gina Paris, Shannon Etheridge, and you. Plus guests after guest after guest after guest that's been on the mic to help make this thing happen. And
Jessica, who's helped you get all those guests.
And the team.
And Jessica, who's helping you. Shiloh, who's been there in history, right?
The platform that's born now, and the dialogues that take place there, and the interactions that happen. And then last, and certainly not least, is the nation.
Right.
It's the listeners that have been through this all the way through and have spoken up and asked questions and supported each other and encouraged each other. And in some regards, kind of finding this breath of fresh air of, I can ask these questions here.
Right. Exactly.
Sweet. Where else can I'm not going to go ask my pastor this kind of a question or what about this, and so it is hopefully a place that we continually strive to be a trusted resource.
Right.
That will speak well and honoring of marriage and what it can become.
Right.
As human beings and as God's children. And that's been our mission, and that continues to be our mission. And one of the cool things, too, is the fact that other people have jumped on board with this to add their voice to help prior emailers or callers. Even though we've maybe already addressed it, there's still times when other people speak into what may be going on.
Corey and Pam, as you were reading the email from the caller whose wife had the medically reduced drive, I found myself repeatedly saying to the radio, "Dude, seriously?" The strength of my reaction was really at my younger self, because I had made some of the same mistakes I believe he's making. I also had two other thoughts. One was, believe what she's telling you. The other is something I believe Corey said in a lot of the earlier SMR episodes. A sign of maturity in a relationship is when you can honestly act towards your spouse in a way that demonstrates, quote, "I want for you what you want for you," end quote. What really struck me is he seemed to contradict himself, saying, quote, "Sex does not do much for her," end quote. Right before he says all that, she says to him, sex, quote, "feels good in the moment," end quote. Later on, he says, quote, "How can I make this enjoyable for both of us?" end quote. Then to close it all out, he asks, how can his wife, who is devoid of sexual desire, continue to participate in sex and enjoy it, and him not feel like she is doing it, so he will just leave her alone? It really sounds to me like he is stuck on the idea that for sex to meet someone's needs at the time, it needs to involve both pre-sex spontaneous desire and then orgasm. So back to my past and earlier mention of, quote, "I want for you what you want for you," end quote. Post-kids, I struggled for years with my wife telling me she only wanted to orgasm roughly once a month. We had sex 2 to 4 times a week, which meant that roughly 90% of the time, it ended up centering around my orgasm. I interpreted that to mean that 90% of the time, it centered around my pleasure and my needs only. She would tell me that she was fine and she didn't want changes in our sex life, which honestly only made it worse. I felt guilty and undesired, and it led to a period of premature ejaculation. What I failed to realize is that I was choosing not to believe my wife, and she can tell that by my actions, even though I never said it. Also, I unintentionally sent the message that I internally believed, which was that she would want something other than what she wanted. So we still had sex, but much of it became something that wasn't truthfully worth having. In time, though, and lots of reflection, and reading and listening to SMR and some other podcasts, I realized I needed to do two things. First was to believe my wife. She told me she can get lots of enjoyment out of sex even if she didn't want to pursue an orgasm. I didn't have to understand what it was like to feel that way in order to accept and believe that. I had to trust her, and with that trust, remove the guilt I was feeling and harmful messages I was sending. Second, quote, I want for her what she wants for her, end quote. She may only want to orgasm once a month, but she wants other things out of sex all the other times. She wants to be close. She wants to be desired. She enjoys the erotic power she possesses and using it to bring what I desire. She likes being playful and laughing and making eye contact and sharing this part of our marriage in a trusting and meaningful way. She wants to make love several times a week, even as she only wants to pursue an orgasm about once a month. In trusting her, I also validated her desire and removed roadblocks to achieving them. So back to episode 538. It sounds like they are talking about it, and this is hopefully just a season of life that will be medically addressed. Regardless, in any marriage, seasons change, so desires change as well. I believe the husband could really help by accepting this is a season of life and stop seeking ways to make her desire in the way he wants her to. Find out what she does enjoy in this season, embrace that, and do what he can to make that happen for her. I think he'll find empowerment of his own in that journey, one that will change much of his mindset and remove the contradictions.
I love the voices that jump into the whole conversation, that just are in it to help other people, because we've said all through the decade that we've been doing this so far. We've said, if you're facing an issue, so is somebody else.
Right.
So speak up, because other people can speak into it as well as us. And so a huge thank you goes to the SMR Nation for showing up each and every week over the decade. And then here is to the decade to come.
That's right.
The art of marriage is really the art of keeping up to date with your partner, of staying on track with your own and each other's life goals as they emerge, exist, and change. It's about supporting each other and staying connected emotionally, intellectually, physically, and spiritually. Marcia Berger, LMFT. A great marriage doesn't happen by accident. Deeper connection with your spouse doesn't happen by accident either. Have you reached the point in your marriage where there's a slow creep of discontent or disconnect? When was the last time you talked with your spouse about anything other than the schedule, work, or kids? What if there was a way to be reminded on a weekly basis to touch base with your spouse? The State of Our Union helps you remember and discover what brought you together in the first place. It's a tool designed to help couples keep the important from being replaced by the immediate. Plus, this works from your own phone. 52 reminders, deepen your conversation, dream, and plan together. Go to smrnation.com/union. Connect on a deeper level today. So there's an email that came in from in the inbox, feedback@sexymarriageradio.com. That says, what are your thoughts on Christians participating in BDSM? I've been told quite a bit of it, and personally, I don't get the appeal, but I have friends who are into some of the softer versions of it. I have my thoughts, but I've never heard a reasonable Christian viewpoint on it, though. So what do you think?
What do you think?
Well, first off, anytime we start getting into the arena of what you could call sex and sexuality and the energies therein on the edges, A lot of people have these guardrails in place that they've never really questioned or asked. Where do they come from? Why do I have this? Why do I have this belief?
Oh, well, okay, sorry, I'm cutting you off here.
Go.
I think there's probably a lot of people listening that are like, I've heard of BDSM, but I don't even really know what it is.
Okay. So it's bondage, and then the D is either discipline or domination. It just depends on which kind of paradigm lane you're going down.
Okay.
Sadism and masochism.
Okay.
Okay. So sadism is where you derive pleasure from somebody else, from pain in others.
Yep.
Masochism is where you derive pleasure for pain in yourself. You're masochistic.
Yep.
So it is one of those areas where you're talking about the underside of relationships a lot, of us as people. We all have a nasty side. We all have touches of this, which I'm going to pivot to in just a minute.
Okay.
But there is an element of playing in that polarity of power, submission, erotic. There's some polarity that comes into this where you both kind of play a role, if you will, that is not typically what a lot of people like to dabble in. And so is there anything biblically as far as scripture goes? I have not come across something that specifically says no. Because there's a lot of gray in some of the nuances where we as Christians struggle, or we as Christians have put up a guardrail that I've just never really even questioned. And this is where we encourage as SMR, as a nation, to just ask yourself, where do these scripts come from? And what do I really believe? And is it serving me where I am now? How do I make sense of this? Because it comes down to your own personal relationship and your own marriage relationship. Because when two consenting adults are involved and are interested in kind of venturing into some of these edges, okay, venture. But again, this is anytime you're doing something that's a little more in the taboo world or in the risque world, because there can be some harm that comes from this. Because while there can be an element of I get a lot of pleasure out of the physical pain, there's some psychological pain that can be in there that maybe festers and brings up some other things that needs to be addressed. Or there's some emotional pain. And so there needs to be tremendous amounts of communication. That's why the whole world of BDSM typically has safe words.
Okay.
And if you haven't established that ahead of time,
you're in trouble.
Then you're setting up scenarios where it does get into disrespectful, degrading, demeaning, which for one partner could heighten it because that's what they're the ones that are really seeking it. But for the other, it causes real severe damage.
Which would not be in line.
No,
with
absolutely.
Scripture,
it's
right?
not something that under a respectful Christian belief and ethic, that's not the way we treat people. It's not the way we interact with people.
Right. Especially a spouse, right? I mean, I'll let you keep
going. No. So it's all that's to say is I love the fact that over the decade now, we have been privy to and help lead in a lot of ways conversations and thought processes that maybe you don't typically have in marriage. It helps us navigate and become better people because just as much as we have grown through these guardrails as people, these boundaries that have been put in place, whether it's from a culture, a religious edict, or fundamental belief system, or even just naivete and anxiety, right?
Sure.
Of like, I don't even want to venture into that. That scares me. The more I can recognize, okay, wait, I can handle and tolerate some of that discomfort of exploring it, on the discomfort meaning of the anxiety that it produces or the uncertainty it produces. Right. The more I can either grow and also solidify, that's not something that does anything for me. So I could kind of check it off the list. If I'm not interested in that, which then can be a clarifying moment for a marriage relationship because then it puts the dynamic of, you know what, honey, no, for celebrating 10 years, I am not doing X.
Right.
Right. And at least then that's a more clear statement of, okay, I could be hanging on to, man, maybe this is the night. This is a big deal. We can, rather than, no, it's very clear. So now I need to live in that context and that pressure that's existing in a marriage regardless anyway.
Well, yeah, right. I need to live with honoring the spouse, right? And back to the initial email that the gentleman brought up, I've got to trust my spouse in their response as well.
Right.
Right? When you're addressing this topic with a spouse, and is this two consenting adults, we have to be able to trust that spouse as well.
Yes.
So that we can't have one spouse that's not going to be truthful in what it is that they are and aren't willing to do, because then you're going to end up with a lot of hurt.
Right.
Potentially physically and mentally.
Right. And it is one of those things that I keep coming across, is this idea of any of the stuff that happens in the sexual and erotic world that has two adults trying to participate and collaborate within it. They have typically reached that point because they have dramatically upped their communication patterns between themselves.
Okay.
Right? Because they've really navigated this, because you can't just, these are sprung on a relationship dynamic unilaterally. One person brings it up. I really want to try this. You don't typically, that's an exposing move.
Sure it
because
is.
you really risk the how dare you. Mm-hmm. Right? But the other is you start navigating and talking through, and this is an empowering stance if you think about it in a lot of ways. And we do this in all areas of life, but this particularly seems to ring true, of having conversations of how do we explore this while both still feeling safe, because I don't give full safety reins over to my partner. I have to hold on to them myself too.
True.
Meaning I'll speak up and I'll do what I need to for me in those moments, knowing it will dramatically alter a situation, but I'm still going to do so. Mm-hmm. That's the collaboration that comes into this. But I want to pivot the conversation into something that's a little more global in this arena, because this is the idea that Schnarch posited. First time I came across it was in his book, Passionate Marriage, where he calls it's normal marital sadism. Right. And this is some of the stuff I love speaking on the most at the getaways.
People have just these aha moments. They're like, oh gosh, I do that.
Because people don't think that I think a lot of times us humans and even maybe us Christians believe we are a lot more good than we really are. That this doesn't exist among good, God-honoring people.
Yeah. Thank goodness for grace.
Absolutely. But I was going to read a couple paragraphs from Schnarch's Passionate Marriage, because I think it captures this idea real cleanly, that I want to just talk briefly about it.
Okay.
That he just says, we all have a nasty side, not the dirty sex type of nasty, which so many cannot harness. Nasty as in, you're not a very good person. There's a side to all of us that's bad or evil. All of us have a touch of it. Some have more. We all torment those we love while feigning unawareness, which I love that phrase.
Feigning unawareness.
Right. I act like I am unaware of the pain and discomfort
that I'm causing you.
See you next time. Marriage is perhaps the place we do it most frequently with impunity. We withhold the sweetness of sex and intimacy while acting like we want to please. And in the course of this deceit, we pervert our sexual potential. Early American philosopher Thomas Paine said that infidelity, as in religious infidel, is not about what we do or don't believe. It's professing to believe what we do not. I'm going to let that sink in for just a second.
Okay.
Because this goes back to a conversation where we've talked about the idea of, rather than looking at infidelity and betrayal, how do you look at this through the lens of fidelity? How are you showing up with all honesty and truth and authenticity in all areas of your life? Because that's where I want to go with marriage, and how sex is a people growing process. It's helping us grow. And one of the ways I need to recognize it is, how do I practice some of these things on the edges that probably aren't under the label of BDSM, but they are? It's normal marital sadism. It's masochism. I'm really harsh on myself, and secretly I kind of enjoy that. I like when it crumbles, and even though it's devastating, so it's just, there's a component of stuff going on, and normal marital sadism plays out in the little things that you do that get under each other's skin, and you're doing it.
Yeah, but I don't care, or maybe I enjoy it.
It's. I think it's both of those can happen, and the little safer example I use when talking about this, because those of you that are listening and have not come across this, I'm assuming one of you in your relationship, one partner in the relationship will be a part of this dynamic. I'm the type that has the quirk that when there's light switches that have multiples on it, at the end of the day, I like them both up or down. Don't like them separate.
He wants both switches go in the same direction.
Right. It's not something, and maybe since I'm trying to justify or defend this, it's a bigger issue than I'm thinking it is in my own mind. But it's not like it throws me off for the day if they're not, but I notice it.
It's an innocent example.
Right. I notice this thing. And there have been times where my wife has walked past one of them and flipped the switch and then goes to the end of the hallway or the room where the other switch is and flips that, knowing that will make them off of this pattern, and maybe giggles to herself out loud, or maybe giggles inside or something. There's some intentionality to it. And
laughing out loud.
That's an example of it. That it's kind of one of those, it's not like it's a huge sadistic move, but it is a little quirky kind of thing. That
just sounds like a practical, funny little joke to me. But give me an example. So that was a practical joke I did that isn't really sadistic in my mind. That's more of a, haha, I want to make him uneasy and giggle.
But there's an undercurrent
bit.
in there. In practical jokes and inside jokes, there's truth in every one, right?
There is. Yes.
And some of it plays on and preys on an element of discomfort or, or I know, this will get them, or okay. And that's the element we're talking about here.
So give me one, though, that might be to me might be a little more, not just I'm trying to get a giggle out of it, but I know will.
So there's really, an actual real tension.
Really
there.
Tick you off.
Okay. Well, then what comes to my mind is what has been part of our history is this idea of I have been a professed butt slapper on the air. I've talked about this, that I love it.
Yeah.
And
my butt, not anybody else's.
And I knew I started having a problem when our kids started doing that when they were really toddlers.
Yeah.
And Will would come by and slap you on the butt too. And it's like, okay, hold on. That's being watched and modeled. We need to kind of make sure that's not always what I'm trying to teach, right? Because people are watching.
Right.
But one of the things that as it's evolved, there have been times and seasons for sure in the past where you were like, please stop.
Right.
And some of it would be a little more forcefully stated.
Yeah.
Some of it would be a little more lightly stated.
Right.
And that's where the vagaries of like, I don't know, is that playful? Is that not? But as it continued in the past, there's an element of, I knew you didn't like it.
Right.
But I would keep doing it at times in the past.
Mm-hmm.
There's an element of what's underneath that. What's the motivation? Is it because I know she's not going to like it? Or is it because I want it and I don't care what you think?
Right.
And the fact that you won't like it? If I go deeper into this, there's an element of that. There's an undercurrent and an underbelly in there that maybe it's not full on sadistic, but there's a nastiness to it.
Yeah.
There's a dismissal to it. There's a something in there. That's kind of what we're talking about. And over the time, this has shifted for us, right? To where the dynamic is different in that the slaps don't happen.
Right.
The gropes might, but
and bring those on. That's okay. That's okay.
Okay. But it's that idea of, okay, that's the pressure of it happening between us and recognizing that, okay, it's not always just as clean cut. It's my preference versus your preference. There's also a what's underneath it for me and why I want to keep doing it when I know it's not something you're necessarily interested in.
Right.
That's entryway into what we're talking about on this.
Okay.
Hey, Corey and Pam. Listen to episode 540, the extended portion, and just wanted to acknowledge you guys for the opportunity that you took to take on this whole conversation, even within your own selves, of the lower desire and higher desire, and just kind of what that means. And to do that in the pretty public fashion you did, whether in the coffee shop, whoever was listening to you, or for our benefit as well. And I'm aware of how so often we as couples will choose to really not take on our own stuff. And some people that may be listening may be thinking that you guys completely have it all together. I know even sometimes when we're just thinking about ourselves and who might we be to offer a word of advice or a word of something that we have learned, knowing that we certainly don't have it together in our relationship. But just so appreciated the conversation that you guys had, the courage, the boldness to take on this topic that obviously is still being processed out even for you guys, and just so appreciate the opportunity to be the fly on the wall as you guys had that conversation. Thanks.
And we're going to leave it at that. I love it when people jump in and continue conversations like we had with leading the show,
Mm-hmm.
but also then kind of give us the feedback of, hey, it's nice knowing that the people behind the mic don't always have it all together too. Because that is a completely true statement.
Well, hopefully everybody that's out there doing podcasts has some sort of experience in a journey where they learned something and they're continuing to learn.
We all need to be learnerers.
Learnerers, yes.
Absolutely.
Dr. Learnerer here on the mic.
This has been Sexy Marriage Radio. Again, thank you so much for the decade. Here's to the decades to come. Because this is so much fun doing this with you, baby.
I love it.
And
I love it.
I love that we get to speak into what's going on and that helping people, and they let us know by calling us at 214-702-9565 or feedback at sexymarriageradio.com. So we'll see you next time.